Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next 30 minutes. India takes serious note of incidents of violence against Hindus and minorities in Bangladesh. Issue of persecution of minorities in Bangladesh echoes in the UK Parliament as well. European and Iranian diplomats meet to discuss Iran's disputed nuclear program. Earlier, a European-backed resolution criticized Iran for poor coordination with UN nuclear watchdog. Kremlin asks Syrian government to restore constitutional order in Aleppo region as soon as possible after insurgent offensive captured territory for the first time in years. Voting underway in Ireland's general elections. Prime Minister Simon Harris's ruling, Fine Gael seeks unprecedented fourth successive term in office. In a written reply in the lower house of Indian Parliament, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said the government has taken serious note of incidents of violence against Hindus in Bangladesh and shared its concern with the government of Bangladesh. He said Indian government had expressed serious concerns regarding the attacks on a puja mandap in Dhaka and theft at Josheshwari Kali Temple in Satkhira during Durga Puja this year. The High Commission of India in Dhaka continues to monitor the situation closely. Primary responsibility for the protection of life and liberty of all citizens of Bangladesh, including the minorities, rests with the government of Bangladesh, the minister said. Meanwhile, the spokesperson of the MEA, Randhir Jaiswal, said India has consistently raised the issue of threats and targeting of minorities, particularly Hindus, with Bangladesh's interim government, and asked Bangladesh to fulfill all its responsibilities.
India has consistently and strongly raised with the Bangladesh government the threats and targeted attacks on Hindus and other minorities. Our position on the matter is very clear. The interim government must live up to its responsibility of protecting all minorities. We are concerned at the surge of extremist rhetoric, increasing incidents of violence and provocation. These developments cannot be dismissed only as media exaggerations. We once again call upon Bangladesh to take all steps for the protection of minorities.
The MEA spokesperson also clarified India's stance on the arrest of Chinmoy Krishnadas and ISKCON, stating that ISKCON is a globally respected organization with a strong record of social service.
We see ISKCON as a globally well-regarded organization with a strong record of social service. As far as the question of the arrest of Sri Chinmoy Das is concerned, we had made a statement on that, and it is our expectation that cases against individuals, as far as they are concerned, these legal processes are underway, and we hope and we expect that these processes will be dealt in a fair, just and transparent manner.
The Environment, Forest, Climate Change Advisor of Bangladesh's interim government, Sayyeda Rizwana Hassan, has said no discussion was held to ban ISKCON in the country. She added that government is not mixing the offences of organizations with the offences of individuals. Earlier on Thursday, Bangladesh High Court refused to intervene in the ISKCON-related violence issues after being informed that the authorities concerned have taken necessary measures in this regard. It expressed satisfaction with the government's response and instructed it to continue efforts to safeguard citizens' lives and property. Later on Thursday, ISKCON Bangladesh's General Secretary said Chinmoy Krishnadas does not belong to them as he was expelled by the organization. He added that the organization would not shoulder any responsibility over his statements and speech. Earlier this week, Chinmoy Prabhu was arrested by Dhaka police on Monday on charges of sedition in Bangladesh. The Bangladesh Financial Intelligence Unit has also ordered freezing of bank accounts for 17 individuals linked to ISKCON Bangladesh. The directive sent to banks and financial institutions suspends all transactions for these accounts for a period of 30 days. Amid violence against Hindus in Bangladesh, UK Member of Parliament Bob Blackman has condemned the attacks on minorities in the country. Addressing the British Parliament on Thursday, Blackman showed his concern by an attempt of a High Court in Bangladesh to ban ISKCON from the country. He said Hindus in Bangladesh are now subject to death, with their spiritual leader being arrested, their houses being burnt.
Right now, Mr. Speaker, the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, who run Bhaktivinoda Manor in Elstree, the largest Hindu temple in this country, in Bangladesh, their spiritual leader is under arrest. Hindus across Bangladesh are being subject literally to death by their houses being burnt, their temples are being burnt, and there was an attempt today in the Bangladesh High Court to rule that ISKCON should be banned from the country. This is a direct attack on Hindus. Now, this is a threat from India now to take action. We have a responsibility because we enabled Bangladesh to be free and independent. Now, whatever the change of government has been in Bangladesh, it cannot be acceptable that religious minorities are persecuted in this way.
India has been re-elected to the UN Peacebuilding Commission for 2025-26 as a founding member and major contributor to the UN peacekeeping. India is committed to continuing its engagement with the PBC to work towards global peace and stability. India is strongly supportive of nationally led plans for peace consolidation, while arguing for a constructive approach and a lighter touch by the PBC in extending advice, support and its involvement. India's unique combination of being the largest democracy in the world with a strong tradition of respect for rule of law and successful experience in nation building makes it particularly relevant in the context of 21st century peace-building initiatives. India's Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra spoke at valedictory session of World Bank Global AEO Conference, India AEO Dialogue on Friday. The Revenue Secretary said India is ready to partner with major economies to facilitate faster clearance and smoother trade operations. The AEO program is part of SAFE framework of the World Customs Organization. India AEO Dialogue Enhancing Global Trade Partnerships kicked off in New Delhi on Thursday.
Let me assure you from my side, from the Indian government side, that the system that we have built in is very robust, and it will help both you and us in being able to filter out, those non-risky traders, and therefore then focus and concentrate on those ones where our energies and efforts should actually devolve. And so we have initiated dialogue with about 41 countries. We have, I think, a joint action plan with 11 of these. 30 are in other stages of, different stages of dialogue and negotiations. So these 18 countries and jurisdictions that are present over here today and others, I would request that we quickly build systems, robust systems, and engage and have an agreement with each other.
US-based veteran global investor Jim Rogers has expressed optimism about India's economic trajectory under leadership of Prime Minister Modi. In an interview, Roger highlighted that Indian economy continues to grow at an impressive pace despite global challenges. In financial year 2023-24, India grew at 8.2% and maintained its position as the fastest growing major economy. Meanwhile, on an optimistic note, Rogers also hinted his intention to reinvest in India, underlining the country's positive shift in economic attitude. He noted that he had previously exited the Indian market too soon, but sees strong potential for future growth. Since coming to power in 2014, Narendra Modi government has implemented several key economic reforms, various initiatives aimed at improving the ease of doing business ecosystem. Moving on, the first week of the winter session got washed out in Indian Parliament. The week was marred by uproarious scenes due to repeated disruptions by the opposition. both houses of the Parliament.
No business could be transacted in the first week of the winter session of Indian Parliament. On Friday too, Congress Member of Parliament created an uproar in the Lok Sabha on the Adani issue. Though during the question hour, Union Minister J.P. Nadda tried to answer questions related to the Health Ministry. However, due to ruckus created by the opposition, the proceedings of the House had to be adjourned till 11 a.m. on Monday. At the same time, the Rajya Sabha, the proposal to extend the term of the Joint Parliamentary Committee constituted for the Waqf Amendment Bill was tabled in the House. But in the upper house too, it was no different. The House had to be adjourned till Monday.
Rule 267 is being weaponized as a mechanism of disruption and disruption from our normal working. There are very senior members. This cannot be appreciated. I express my deep anguish.
The ruling Bharatiya Janata Party attacked the opposition on the continuous uproar in the House. The government also condemned the opposition for the disruptions. Since the beginning of the winter session, all the bills slated for the day could not come up for discussion due to repeated disruptions. Vishal Baristo's report for DD India.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Odisha for the DGIGP conference, which is taking place for the first time in the eastern Indian state. India's Prime Minister reached Bhubaneswar in the evening on Friday, where he was felicitated upon his arrival on stage amid chants of "Long live Mother India." He was also presented a garland and a traditional scarf in the presence of other dignitaries. Addressing the mass of people gathered to welcome him, PMModi said that after formation of the double-engine government in Odisha, development in every sector has gained momentum.
उड़ीसा में डबल इंजन की सरकार बनने के बाद यहाँ हर सेक्टर में विकास ने नई गति पकड़ ली है। उड़ीसा में एक साथ हजारों करोड़ की इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर परियोजनाओं पर काम शुरू हुआ है। सरकार की कल्याणकारी योजनाओं का फायदा हर वर्ग को मिलना शुरू हुआ है। खेल हो, शिक्षा हो, पर्यटन हो, हर क्षेत्र में उड़ीसा ने जो रफ्तार पकड़ी है वो अभूतपूर्व है। उड़ीसा के शहरों में आधुनिक सुविधाएं, नई सुविधाएं जोड़ी जा रही हैं और राज्य की भाजपा सरकार यहां स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम डेवलप करने पर फोकस कर रही है। नौजवानों का उज्ज्वल भविष्य का शिलान्यास हो रहा है। राज्य की धरोहर को समृद्ध बनाने का अभियान भी तेज गति से चलाया जा रहा है। मिशन पूर्वोदय से भी उड़ीसा का विकास की नई रफ्तार पकड़ रहा है।
And the Indian Prime Minister will attend the All India Conference of Director Generals and Inspector Generals of Police from 30th November to 1st of December in Bhubaneswar, Odisha state. The three-day conference will include deliberations on critical components of national security, including counter-terrorism, left-wing extremism, new criminal laws and narcotics. The President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service will also be awarded during the conference. The seminar will also be attended by Union Home Minister Amit Shah. The Indian medical technology and electronics industry is currently worth about $15 billion. With Modi government's production-linked incentive scheme, PIL, and focus on ease of doing business, the industry leaders who met at the CII conclave on medical technology were optimistic for the future growth in the industry.
India is very well poised because of the talent we have in terms of software, hardware, plus the today low cost of labor we have versus China. I think a lot of advantages to take this industry to the next level on the global scale. We have also got a new export promotion council which is dedicated to medical device exports. So that's another important area. Recently, government has also come out with 5 different schemes for medical device industry. We allocated 500 crores. This scheme was just announced a few weeks ago. Again, that talks about indigenous value add, or talks about clinical trials, importance of clinical trials, and how government will support industries for that, training needs. So there are different aspects which are covered under this scheme. So now this industry is pretty much on government's radar to create self-reliance for these products in India and also capture the global markets. Of course, these are good things done by the government. As an industry, we are also looking for some more ease of doing business, overlapping regulations. So, as an industry, we would also like government to engage more with the industry, especially the local industry, where they can bring in some more ease of doing business, ease some regulations, so that industry is less burdened by those things and can invest more in R&D, manufacturing, and capture the global markets.
Sir, what are the regulations that you want a little easing of? Which are the regulations which you feel are a little impediment to your growth?
So, if you see currently we have Drugs and Cosmetics Act, which regulates the medical device industry. So we are part of the pharma regulation. Drugs and pharma and medical devices are seen under the same lens. We have the same regulator. So I think our industry's demand was to have a separate regulator.
And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Taiwan reports an increase in Chinese military activity around the island. Protests in Georgia after Prime Minister delays EU bid to 2028. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Iranian and European diplomats met on Friday to discuss Iran's nuclear program, first such engagement since Donald Trump's victory in the US elections. The meeting in Geneva comes after Tehran was irked by a European-backed resolution last week that criticized Iran's cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog. Iran has told the watchdog that it plans to ramp up uranium enrichment. During his last term, Trump pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear deal. France, Germany and the UK are still party to the pact, which ends in October next year. Russian and Syrian warplanes bombed rebel-held northwest Syria near the border with Turkey on Thursday to push back an insurgent offensive that captured territory for the first time in years. The joint Russian-Syrian offensive were massive, inflicting heavy losses to the rebels. The Islamist militant group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham allied faction said they had seized control of more than a dozen of towns and villages in Aleppo and Idlib provinces since Wednesday. The Syrian military said its forces were confronting a large-scale attack by terrorists. The army said it was cooperating with Russia and unnamed friendly forces to regain ground and restore the situation. A UK-based monitoring group said more than 200 combatants on both sides had been killed in the fighting. At least 19 civilians had also been killed in Syrian and Russian airstrikes on opposition-held areas. More than 500,000 people have been killed in the civil war that erupted after the government cracked down violently on peaceful pro-democracy protests in 2011. Russia, a close ally of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, intervened in Syria's civil war in 2015, helping shift the conflict in Assad's favor. And meanwhile, Kremlin said on Friday it wanted the Syrian government to restore constitutional order in the Aleppo region as soon as possible after an insurgent offensive there captured territory for the first time in years. Rebels led by Islamist militant group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham launched an incursion on Wednesday into dozens of towns and villages in the northwestern province of Aleppo, which is controlled by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's forces. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Moscow regarded the attack as a violation of Syria's sovereignty, wanted the authorities to act fast to regain control. Moving on, Taiwan on Friday reported an increase in Chinese military activity around the island, detecting some 41 PLA aircraft and vessels around the island. In response, Taiwan stepped up security along its maritime borders. Taiwan's armed forces conducted a comprehensive air defense drill on Thursday as China reportedly prepares for its third large-scale military exercise, Joint Sword. near Taiwan. The drill, which involved air, naval and missile defense units, was conducted to strengthen readiness against potential aerial and missile threats. The Air Force Command stated that the exercise took place from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., deploying fighter jets, naval vessels and air defense missile systems. Aircraft such as indigenous defense fighter Mirage 2000, F-16 and C-130 transport planes were utilized along with ground-based air defense missile units. Russian President Vladimir Putin threatened to strike decision-making centers in Kiev with Russia's new hypersonic missiles. Putin said a Russian overnight missile and drone attack on Ukraine's power grid was a response to Ukraine's use of long-range US and UK weapons inside Russia. Russia fired more than 90 missiles and around 100 drones during the barrage, with Ukrainian President Zelensky urging his allies to respond firmly to what he dubbed as Russian blackmail.
We will respond to such acts of aggression against the Russian Federation. How and when and with what weapons we will respond will depend on the targets that will be selected by the General Staff of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. Because for each, a different type of weapon suitable for these purposes must be used.
Meanwhile, Ukraine reports no fatalities after the attack, but more than 1 million Ukrainians are left without power as 12 targets were struck. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of a despicable escalation, saying it had used cruise missiles with cluster munitions. He also discussed the attack with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who described targeting the energy sector as depraved.
We must respond together to Russia's attempt to make the situation more unbearable and to try to drag out this war. We are interested in peace, us and all partners. Now is the time to strengthen our positions, the positions of Ukraine and our partners. Any Russian blackmail must be met with a tough response, in the way Putin deserves, and we must see the prospect of ending the war with genuine peace together with America, together with Europe, together with all the partners.
Israel said its air force struck a facility used by Hezbollah to score mid-range rockets in southern Lebanon on Thursday, after both sides accused one another of breaching a ceasefire that aims to halt over a year of fighting. Israeli military said it also opened fire on Thursday towards what it called suspects with vehicles arriving at several areas in the southern zone, saying it was a breach of truce with Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah, which came into effect on Wednesday. Hezbollah lawmaker Hassan Fadallah in turn accused Israel of violating ceasefire several times on Wednesday and Thursday. Further, Israeli army has prohibited displaced Lebanese from returning to their homes in southern Lebanon. The military released a map of Lebanon's south and warned that Lebanese residents are not allowed to enter the area until further notice. The exchange of accusations highlighted the fragility of the ceasefire, which was brokered by the United States and France to end the conflict fought in parallel with Gaza war. The truce lasts for 60 days in hope of reaching a permanent cessation of hostilities. Israel's airstrike on Thursday was the first since truce took effect on Wednesday morning. The political climate is getting rougher in Berlin as Germany is preparing for snap elections. That weeks after three-party coalition government failed. One of the reasons it failed, the debt break in the German constitution, which some are supporting as a fiscally conservative measure, others reject as a hindrance in economic growth. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle, joins me from Berlin. Lars, what are the current developments around the debt break?
Thanks for having me. Well, I suppose we have to look back and just quickly talk about what exactly the debt break is. It was a political idea and later put into the constitution that bans the government from expanding federal debt in order to balance the books. It all started in 2009. The German government had just spent billions to support the country's banks and financial system after the worldwide financial crisis. But that had worried investors, it had weakened bond markets. And the idea was to implement a policy that would encourage confidence. So they decided that the government would have to balance its budget every year without amassing new debt. So basically by saving money somewhere in order to spend it elsewhere. For a long time, that made sense. After all, constantly adding to the country's debt leaves the government with ever-rising costs and less money to actually work with. Also, it's unfair to future generations to leave them all that debt. However, one could argue it's also unfair to future generations to let the country's infrastructure crumble, to fail to invest and threaten the country's economy and growth by strictly adhering to a concept that might have been helpful a few years ago and isn't any longer.
Lars, thank you. Roses in full bloom in Australia, in the country's island state, nestled within the walls of the Tasmanian UNESCO World Heritage listed property as the state's largest rose collection. The sprawling 1.5 hectare garden at Woolmer's Estate at Longford in northern Tasmania is largely maintained by about a dozen volunteers. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates on our websites. Also note Prasar Bharati's OTT platform, Waves. That's going to be a treat for viewers. You can download now for free content on this exclusive OTT. And with that, we conclude this edition of DD India Live. Namaskar.